No, Carol, there's a lot of things I'm good at, but Shakespeare's not one of them.
Remember, there was a stretch of the early 1990s when Friday night wasn't really a decision. You showed up. ABC's TGIF block ran the show. And for 2 hours a week, millions of kids across the country sat in front of the same lineup at the same time. Somewhere in the middle of that lineup was a sitcom about two single parents who got married on a whim in Jamaica and came home to introduce 6 kids who had never met and did not particularly want to. That show was Step by Step. Patrick Duffy played Frank Lambert, a Wisconsin contractor trying to keep a household of teenagers from falling apart. Suzanne Summers played Carol Foster, a salon owner who somehow ran that household anyway. Toss and a van-dwelling cousin named Cody, a small army of step-siblings who couldn't stand each other, and a theme song that's probably still lodged somewhere in your skull, and you've got one of the most recognizable Friday night families of the decade. The show premiered on ABC in September 1991 and ran for 7 seasons, producing 160 episodes before finishing out its run on CBS in 1998, a fact confirmed by the show's own production history. What most viewers never clocked, though, is how much chaos was happening behind the cameras. Contract disputes, real gunfire, a character who simply vanished without anyone mentioning it, and one crossover, so strange it still shows up in shared television universe, debates almost 35 years later. Here are 15 things about Step by Step that never made it into the theme song. Stick around for number 1. The show's most beloved couple was never supposed to happen in the first place. When Sasha Mitchell first stepped onto the Step by Step set as Cody Lambert, Frank's motorcycle-riding, van-dwelling nephew, he wasn't hired to stick around. Cody was written as a recurring character for the first season only, a guy who could roll into a scene, deliver a strange line, and roll back out. Nobody had big plans for him. The plans changed fast. By the start of season 2, Cody had been promoted to a full-time series regular, living in that battered van parked permanently in the Lamberts' driveway. Mitchell brought a genuinely strange mix of qualities to the role, a Valley Guy vocabulary, an easy dim-witted drawl, and underneath all of it, a character who was frequently the most emotionally grounded person in the house. It's the classic sitcom lightning-in-a-bottle story, a side character built to fill space, who instead becomes the reason people tune in. What made Cody different from a lot of surprise breakout sitcom characters is that he didn't just work as comic relief. He worked as a big brother figure, a peacemaker, and, thanks to Mitchell's real martial arts background, an occasional action hero in the middle of a family comedy. It's a strange combination on paper. Somehow on screen it clicked. By 1991, the squeaky clean nuclear family sitcom was starting to feel like a museum piece. The Brady Bunch had already spent 2 decades as the cultural shorthand for a blended family show, and network executives were hunting for a way to update that formula without throwing it out entirely. Step by Step was the answer ABC landed on, and critics noticed the resemblance immediately, not always kindly. Reviews at the time frequently described the show as a rehash of the Brady Bunch, with some critics dismissing the premiere outright while praising the same night's competing debut, Brooklyn Bridge, as the better new show of the season. That head-to-head comparison became something of a running joke in TV criticism for years afterward. The best and worst new shows of the fall both premiering on the same night, but the show leaned into its blue-collar, 2 single-parent setup in a way that felt distinct from the Brady formula. Frank was a contractor, not an architect. Carol ran a home salon instead of managing a spotless suburban household with a live-in housekeeper. The show wasn't hiding its influences. It was updating them for an audience raised on a slightly messier, more sarcastic version of family television. To viewers watching Step by Step in the early 90s, Suzanne Summers looked like she belonged there, funny, warm, completely comfortable running a chaotic household on screen. What a lot of younger viewers didn't know is that more than a decade earlier, Summers had effectively been blacklisted from network television. In 1980, at the height of Three's Company's popularity, Summers asked ABC for a raise from $30,000 an episode to $150,000, matching what co-star John Ritter was earning, along with a share of the show's profits. According to Summers' own later accounts and reporting from outlets, including The Hollywood Reporter, the network had recently been forced into a costly renegotiation with the female leads of Laverne and Shirley, and had no interest in repeating that fight. ABC countered with a $5,000 bump. When Summers pushed back, her role was cut down to brief, separately filmed scenes for the remainder of her contract, and she was written out of the show entirely afterward. Summers has said publicly that the fallout kept her largely out of television work through most of the 1980s, a period she filled with Las Vegas residencies and the Thighmaster infomercials that made her a household name for entirely different reasons. When Step by Step came along in 1991, it wasn't just another job. It was a full-scale return to the kind of role Hollywood had spent a decade acting like she couldn't carry. Carol Foster was a business owner and a mother holding a 6-kid household together. And by the mid-1990s, the same network that had quietly pushed Summers out was building its Friday nights around her. Family Matters and Step by Step aired back-to-back on ABC's TGIF lineup, and in the second week of Step by Step's run, the two shows pulled off one of the strangest stunts in early 90s network television. The Family Matters episode Brain Over Brawn ends with Steve Urkel trying to win a school contest with brains instead of brawn, using a homemade rocket pack that malfunctions and launches him off into the night. Step by Step's second episode, The Dance, picks up exactly where that gag left off. Urkel comes crashing down in the Lambert Foster family's backyard in Port Washington, Wisconsin. The two scenes aired back-to-back with no interruption, as though the character had simply flown from one show into another. Once he landed, Jaleel White's Urkel spent the rest of the episode helping his science fair pen pal Mark Foster and cheering up Alicia, Al Lambert, after she got dumped right before a school dance, even reprising his signature Urkel dance during the episode's climax. It's worth noting that in later syndicated airings and streaming releases, the crossover ending was often swapped out for an alternate cut, showing Urkel flying off over the Chicago skyline instead, likely for licensing reasons, meaning a lot of rerun viewers never even saw the version that connected the two shows. Placing that crossover in episode 2, not deep into a later season as a rating stunt, was a deliberate signal from ABC. It told every Family Matters fan tuning in that night that this new, unproven sitcom was already part of the same television world they already loved. Every season, the opening credits showed the same thing: the Lambert Foster family screaming down a massive wooden roller coaster, a bumper car ride, and a glittering lake stretching out behind them like the whole town of Port Washington, Wisconsin, sat on the water. None of that lake was real. The opening sequence was filmed at Six Flags Magic Mountain in Valencia, California, a theme park located well inland, nowhere near a coastline of any kind. According to reporting from Los Angeles Magazine and the park's own official history, production crews digitally superimposed a shoreline over Magic Mountain's parking lot in the aerial shots to fake the lakeside setting. The roller coaster in the footage was real, though. It's Colossus, at the time one of the largest wooden coasters in the world, which the park has since retired. Magic Mountain has doubled for plenty of fictional locations over the decades. It famously played Wally World in National Lampoon's Vacation a few years earlier, but the step-by-step intro is one of its more enduring disguises. If you go back and watch the opening credits closely, the water in the aerial shots does look slightly too still, and the lighting doesn't fully match the rest of the frame. Nobody was expected to notice in 1991, and mostly nobody did. Brandon Call, who played oldest Lambert's son JT, lived through one of the more unsettling off-screen stories connected to any TGIF cast member. On September 3, 1996, after wrapping a day of filming, Call got into a road rage confrontation with another driver while heading home. According to court records and multiple contemporary news reports, the other driver, Tommy Eugene Lewis, chased Call's car into what turned out to be a dead-end street and opened fire, hitting Call in both arms. Call was still able to drive himself toward help before being treated at UCLA Medical Center. Lewis was later convicted of attempted premeditated murder. What's notable is how quickly Call returned to the show. Co-star Christine Lakin, who played his on-screen sister Al, has spoken about the incident in interviews, describing it as the kind of traumatic event that changes a person. There was no special episode built around it and no on-screen acknowledgement of what had happened. Production simply adjusted around him. Wardrobe shifted toward long sleeves and layers that covered his arms, and the show carried on without ever drawing attention to why. Call retired from acting not long after Step by Step wrapped in 1998, and has largely stayed out of the entertainment industry since. The Lambert Foster home looked like it belonged on an actual Midwestern street, and in a sense, it did, just not in Wisconsin. Exterior shots were filmed on residential streets in the Los Angeles area that have been used repeatedly by Hollywood productions looking for a generic, all-American suburban look, precisely because those neighborhoods lack the palm trees and hillside sprawl that usually give away a Southern California filming location. The interior, though, the porch, the driveway, the kitchen where half the family arguments happened, was built on a soundstage, standard practice for a multi-camera sitcom of that era. The exterior location provided the establishing shot. Everything the audience actually spent time inside was a constructed set. It's a common arrangement for sitcoms of the period, but it's easy to forget just how much of a real TV house is, functionally, plywood and lighting rigs. This kind of setup was less a step-by-step quirk than an industry standard for the entire multi-camera sitcom era. Building interiors on a soundstage gives a production far more control over lighting, camera blocking, and audio for a live studio audience than shooting inside an actual private residence ever could. No landlord to negotiate with. No worrying about damaging a real family's kitchen after 7 seasons of slamming cabinet doors for a laugh line. The exterior location just needed to sell the illusion for a few seconds of establishing footage before cutting to the built set. And the trick worked well enough that most viewers never thought to question it. Here's something that only becomes obvious if you go back and actually rewatch the series in order. The Lambert Foster household loses people without explanation, more than once. The clearest example is Brendan Lambert, Frank's youngest son, played by Josh Byrne. Brendan appears regularly in the early seasons as part of the family. According to IMDb's production notes on the series, Byrne left acting during season 6, and from that point forward, Brendan was simply never seen or mentioned again, even though Frank and Carol continued to reference having 7 children collectively, without ever addressing what happened to him on screen. There was no goodbye scene, no line about summer camp, nothing. He was there, and then the show moved on as though the math still worked. Brendan wasn't the first character to vanish quietly, either. In the first season, Carol had both a sister, Aunt Penny, played by Patrika Darbo, and a mother, Ivy, played by Peggy Ray, written in as recurring family members. Both characters were written out after season 1, with no on-screen explanation, according to the show's own cast records. It's a strange pattern for a series so built around the idea of family. Characters simply exit the narrative, and the show never circles back to acknowledge the gap. By the time Step by Step came calling, Patrick Duffy had spent 13 seasons playing Bobby Ewing on Dallas, one of the biggest dramas in television history. He could reasonably have chased another prestige role, a film career, or another high-profile drama. Instead, he took a multi-camera sitcom. Duffy has talked in interviews about valuing the sitcom production schedule specifically because it meant predictable hours and time at home with his kids, in contrast to the demands of a long-running primetime drama. Casting him as Frank Lambert also happened to satisfy a contractual obligation from Lorimar, the studio behind Dallas, which had promised Duffy a new series once the show ended, and Lorimar went on to co-produce Step by Step in its early seasons. The shift in on-screen persona was significant. Bobby Ewing was polished oil money. Frank Lambert wore flannel and worried about keeping 6 kids from burning the house down. Duffy's low-key, unbothered energy on set reportedly meshed well with Summers' own approach, and the pairing became one of the more comfortable on-screen partnerships of the TGIF era. 2 industry veterans who'd both already been through the ringer of network television and weren't fighting to outshine each other. The entire premise of Step by Step rests on a whirlwind decision. Frank and Carol meet on vacation in Jamaica, fall for each other fast, and get married before either of them has really thought it through. 6 kids, 1 house, instant chaos. Except, within the show's own storyline, there was a wrinkle. A handful of episodes into season 1, Frank and Carol learn that their Jamaican wedding was never legally recognized in the United States, meaning the marriage the entire series is built around technically hadn't happened yet under the law. The storyline forces the 2 of them to get married again, properly, which the show plays for comedy. Carol wants a real ceremony. Frank would rather just sign paperwork at City Hall, and the actual wedding ends up squeezed between other family obligations rather than treated as a big event. It's a small storytelling detail, but it fits the show's overall tone, a family that leapt before it looked twice. Step by Step looked like a self-contained world, but several cast members were working other jobs across the decade, often in animation. Christopher Castile, who played Carol's son Mark Foster for all 7 seasons, also provided the original voice of Eugene Horowitz in the first season of Nickelodeon's Hey Arnold, according to the character's official voice credit records. That means the same actor playing the bookish foster kid on Friday nights was also voicing the perpetually unlucky Eugene on Saturday mornings. Jason Marsden, who joined the cast in Season 5 as JT's best friend Rich Hawk and eventually became Dana's love interest, was simultaneously one of the busiest voice actors of the decade. Marsden voiced Max Goof in Disney's A Goofy Movie starting in 1995, a role he's continued to reprise in Disney projects for decades since, all while playing Rich on Step by Step through the show's final season. And by the later seasons, most of the cast playing high schoolers were well into their 20s in real life, which is fairly standard for network sitcoms, but easy to forget once you're watching as an adult. If Step by Step ever felt oddly familiar, even in scenes that had nothing to do with Family Matters or Full House, that's because a lot of TGIF's biggest hits shared the same production company. Miller Boyd Productions, run by Thomas L. Miller and Robert L. Boyd, working alongside creators William Bickley and Michael Warren. Multi-camera family sitcoms of that specific era tended to follow a recognizable rhythm, a chaotic setup, a sitcom-sized conflict, and a softer emotional beat near the end where a parent delivers a life lesson before the credits roll. Step by Step, Family Matters, and Full House all ran on some version of that structure, along with similar sitcom architecture, an open kitchen and living room set, a character who exists just outside the core family unit, Urkel next door, Cody in the driveway, and a big, hook-heavy theme song designed to be instantly recognizable. None of this made the shows interchangeable. The character writing and performances were distinct enough that each series built its own devoted audience, but the underlying blueprint for Miller Boyd is easy to spot once you know what to look for across their catalog of Friday night hits. It also explains why the shows felt comfortable crossing paths with each other, as with the Urkel crossover covered earlier in this list. When a production company is running several shows on the same network block with overlapping creative teams, blurring the line between those fictional worlds is a relatively low-cost way to boost a newer show's visibility using a more established one's built-in audience. It worked often enough that TGIF, as a branded lineup, became almost as recognizable to viewers as any individual show within it. On screen, Cody's occasional roundhouse kick played as a goofy surprise from an otherwise laid-back character. Off-screen, it wasn't a stunt. Sasha Mitchell trained as a martial artist, held a black belt, and had already taken over the lead role in the Kickboxer film franchise, playing David Sloan across 3 sequels starting in 1991, following the original film that starred Jean-Claude Van Damme. That real background gave Cody a strange, specific energy that few sitcom characters of the era had. Equally believable delivering a joke about a sandwich and handling himself in an actual physical confrontation. The character's run ended less cleanly than it began. In the mid-1990s, Mitchell faced serious legal trouble. He was arrested in 1995 following domestic violence accusations from his then-wife and was convicted in 1996, receiving probation, community service, and counseling requirements before later violating probation and serving jail time, according to court reporting cited in multiple retrospective accounts of the show. Cody was written off the series after Season 5, with no on-screen send-off. The production brought in Bronson Pinchot, already well known from Perfect Strangers, as a new character, Jean-Luc, a French hairstylist working alongside Carol, but the replacement never matched Cody's popularity, and ratings continued sliding. Mitchell returned briefly for a handful of episodes in the show's final CBS season, by which point the series was already running out of momentum. If the ending of Step by Step felt strangely anticlimactic, that's because it basically was one. In 1997, CBS acquired both Step by Step and Family Matters from ABC in a deal to build its own Friday night family programming block, sometimes referred to informally as the network's answer to TGIF. The move uprooted both shows from the lead-in programming and audience habits they'd built over years on ABC. Ratings dropped quickly after the move, and CBS canceled Step by Step in February 1998, then burned off the remaining completed episodes over the following months, rather than producing any kind of proper series send-off. According to interviews with the show's own cast, the planned series finale was meant to be the wedding of Dana Foster and Rich Hawk, a natural closing note for one of the show's central relationships. Instead, the last episode that actually aired centered on a comparatively minor storyline about Frank considering a new house, with no wedding, no farewell scene, and no acknowledgement that the show was ending at all. For a series that had already quietly written off 2 children and a grown cousin without explanation, going out without so much as a goodbye scene felt oddly in character. When Jason Marsden's Rich Hawk first showed up in Season 5 as JT's easygoing, not particularly academically motivated best friend, he was designed as comic relief. A supporting character, nothing more. Dana Foster, played by Stacey Keenan, was written as sharp, ambitious, and openly unimpressed by him, which is a fairly standard sitcom setup for 2 characters who clash constantly. The chemistry between the 2 actors reportedly became obvious to the writers well before it became a planned storyline, and by Season 6, Dana and Rich were an established couple, with Rich effectively moving into the family orbit as a semi-permanent fixture. The relationship became central enough to the show's later seasons that, according to cast interviews, the writers had built the planned series finale specifically around their wedding, a full, intentional send-off for a pairing that had started as a background joke. That wedding never aired. The show got canceled before the storyline could pay off, and while there were reportedly early discussions about a potential Dana and Rich spin-off following the couple beyond the Lambert Foster household, those conversations never went further, according to cast accounts given in later retrospectives. For a show whose foundational marriage wasn't even legally valid on the first try, ending its central romance mid-sentence feels almost fitting.